This is an instructional video on how to find the volume of a cylinder. To find the volume of a cylinder, we're going to use the formula V equals pi r squared h. V stands for volume, R stands for the radius, the radius is the half part of the circle. Sometimes you might occasionally see the letter D. D is for diameter. Diameter is the whole line of the circle. And then H stands for height. And so in these problems, you'll be given a picture of a cylinder, and then you will have to identify the radius and the height and plug those values, those numerical values, into our equation, V equals pi r squared h. When it comes to the pi value, pi can have three different types of numbers. Most commonly, you will use 3.14. It may also tell you to use the number 22/7. And if it does not specify, we use the pi button on the calculator. For your final answer, the very last answer, you are going to round it to the nearest tenth. That's 1 decimal place. So for this problem, we have our cylinder, and we're going to use our formula, V equals pi r squared h. R is the radius, so it's the half line of the circle. You can see this half line here. And so we're going to plug the value 6 in for the radius. So instead of r squared, we're going to do 6 squared. H, the height, is the line going up and down, which is represented by the 4 value. And we write that number in parentheses. We are multiplying by the h, by height. To solve the problem, we do 6 squared first, which gets us 36. Then we can solve 36 times 4, which is 144. And then our last step, it tells us to use 3.14 for pi. So we're going to do 144 times our pi value, 3.14. And we get 452.16. We only need 1 decimal place in our answer. We have 2. So we look at that value, the second value, and decide if we are going to round up or down. 5 and higher, we round up. 4 and less, we round down. Since we have a 6, that is 5 or higher, so we round up. Our final answer is 452.2. The 0.1 rounds up to a 0.2. For this problem, we have our cylinder, so we're going to use our formula, V equals pi r squared h. You should notice that this line for the circle goes all the way across the circle. That is the diameter. We do not want to use the diameter. We want to use the radius. We only want half of the line. So instead of 8, we're going to use the answer 4. The radius is half of the line. So 4 squared. Our height, the straight line, is 10. When we solve the problem, we do 4 squared first. 4 squared is 16. Next, we're going to do 16 times our height, 10, which is going to give us 160. And these directions say to leave your answer in terms of pi, meaning the pi value is in the final answer. We do not multiply by 3.14. We do not multiply by 22/7 or the pi button. We leave the pi symbol in the answer, 160 pi. For this cylinder, we're using that same equation, V equals pi r squared h. Again, you should notice that this circle line goes all the way across. The 10 represents the diameter. We do not want to use the diameter. We want to use the radius, which is half. So instead of 10, we're going to use half of that. We're going to use 5. 5 squared, and then our height going up and down is 2.5. When we solve the problem, we solve the 5 squared first to get us 25. Then we can multiply 25 by the height 2.5, which gets us 62.5. There's nothing else in the problem that tells us to either leave the answer in terms of pi or what to multiply by. So in that case, we are going to multiply by the pi button on the calculator. And when we do that, we get a big long decimal. We only write down the 2 decimal places, so 0.34, and then we round. 4 is 4 and less, so we round down. 5 and higher, round up. 4 and less, round down. So 196.3. For our cylinder, we're going to use our equation V equals pi r squared h. Our radius is represented by the 10 because that line is only going halfway through the circle. So we're going to do 10 squared. And our height, the straight line, is going to be 15.2. We solve the 10 squared first. 10 squared is 100. 100 times the height, 15.2, is going to give us 1,520. These directions say to use 22 over 7 for pi. So we're going to do 1,520 times 22 over 7. We again get a big long decimal. That's okay. Write the whole number, 4777.2 decimal places, 14. We look at that second decimal place and decide if we round up or down. 5 and higher, we round up. 4 and less, we round down. And so our final answer is going to be 4,777.1. We rounded down, 4 and less. For every cylinder, we use the formula V equals pi r squared h. The 16 represents the diameter because that line goes all the way across. We do not want to represent the diameter, we only want the radius, so we're going to do half of 16. We're going to use 8. And so that's going to be 8 squared. Our height is going to be 7, the line going up and down. We solve the 8 squared first. 8 squared is 64. 64 times the height 7 is 448. These directions say to use 3.14 for pi. So we're going to do 448 times 3.14. And we get the answer 1,406.72. We look at that second decimal place and decide if we round up or down. 5 and higher, we round up. 4 and less, we round down. We have a 2, so that's going to be 4 or less. We're going to round down. Our final answer is 1,406.7. For every cylinder, we use the formula V equals pi r squared h. We use our radius, the half line of the circle, 1.5. And our height goes in parentheses, 4. We start by solving the 1.5 squared first and get 2.25. 2.25 times 4 is going to give us 9. There are no directions about what to multiply for pi, so we're going to use the pi button on the calculator. 9 times the pi button is going to give us 28 point and a big long decimal. We only write 2 values after the decimal place because we look at that second decimal place and decide if we round up or down. 5 and higher, we round up. 4 and less, we round down. This is a 7. 7 is 5 and higher, so we're going to round up. 22 point, the 0.2 rounds up. to a 0.3. For this problem, it tells us that it's the volume of a cylinder, so we know that we're going to use our formula, V equals pi r squared h. This time it gives us the volume of 942, so that's our V value. It is asking us to find the radius. We do not know what that radius value is, but it does tell us that the height is 12 feet. We have to work backwards in order to solve this problem. So, to combine like terms, the parentheses that are 12 is written in our height. Parentheses means multiply. So we do the opposite, we divide. We're going to do the 942 divided by 12, which is going to give us 78.5. We can also go ahead and divide by pi, because we always multiply by pi at the end. We can go ahead and divide by pi. If we use the 3.14 value for pi, when we divide 78.5 divided by 3.14, we get an answer of 25. And the last step, because we have an exponent 2, the opposite of the exponent 2 is to take the square root of 25. The square root of 25 is 5. The radius, r, is 5. Drew and Bo both have cylindrical water bottles. Because it tells us it's a cylinder, we know we're going to use our equation V equals pi r squared h. Drew's water bottle has a diameter of 6 inches and a height of 4 inches. So it tells us the diameter. We don't want the diameter, we want half of that. So we're not going to use 6, we're going to use 3. So 3 squared and our height of 7. Remember, this one is Drew's water bottle. We solved the 3 squared to get 9. 9 times 7 is going to give us 63. The directions specifically say to use 22 over 7. So 63 times 22 over 7 is going to give us 198. So that's Drew's water bottle. Now for Bo's water bottle, it's still a cylinder as well, so we use the same equation, pi r squared h. It has a diameter of 4 inches. We don't want a diameter, we want the radius. So we're going to do half of that, we're going to do 2 inches. And the height is 9 inches. 2 squared is going to give us 4. 4 times 9 is going to give us 36. Again, we're using 22 over 7 for pi, which is going to give us 113, and again, a decimal. We only write the 2 decimal places and decide if we round up or down. 5 and higher, we round up. 4 and less, we round down. 113.1. So when we answer the question, whose water bottle holds more water, we can say Drew's water bottle holds more water. His holds 198 ounces of water, and Bo's holds 113.1 ounces of water. The second part of the question asks how much more does it hold? To find out how much more, we subtract. Drew is 198 minus Bo, which is 113.1. And so it holds 84.9 more water. And it would be in inches. So for this problem, it says Leanne has a cylindrical water tank in her backyard. Cylindrical tells us what formula to use. V equals pi r squared h. It has a diameter of 3. We don't want the diameter, we want the radius, so we only want half. Half of 3 is 1.5. And then the height is 2. We solve the 1.5 squared first to get 2.25. 2.25 times 2 is going to give us 4.5 pi. The directions say to leave your answer in terms of pi, meaning we do not multiply. We leave pi in the answer. V equals 4.5 pi.